And it's because of your support that we get to do all of this. So thank you so much for doing that. And it's just it's pretty amazing that we can go live and talk Disney and share something that so many of us have a passion for right here from the dead center of the United States, St. Peters, Missouri, which is right in the dead, couldn't be really much more in the dead center of the United States. And hear from listeners from Australia, the UK, Japan, Germany, South America, and all over the states that we have common things. We have common backgrounds. We enjoy similar experiences when we go to Disney destinations, but we also have things that we like that are different and we can all learn from each other. And I love that we have this community. So thank you so much because of your support here on Patreon. We get to have one heck of a time. So I appreciate it. I hope you're having a great week. It's fall here in the States and it's a wonderful time of the year. Right now, today, it is sunny. The sky is blue here in the Midwest. I mean, there is not a cloud in the sky today. It's going for a high of like 68. I mean, this is one of those Chamber of Commerce days. It's gorgeous here. It is just wonderful. I mean, you want to bottle a day like this, and in January, you wish you could go back to it and say, "Could we have this day?" And really enjoy it. So hope you have a great weather where you are. What's going on around here? Football season wrapping up. I can't believe it. High school football season. We were talking about this with some of the parents at our game this past Friday night, that it seems like it just started. We're getting into the routine of, Friday nights. Everybody goes to work on Fridays. You get all your work done, and then Pam teaches. She comes, she rushes home. Mallory's a cheerleader, so she's at school all day on Friday. They have the team meal for the cheerleaders, and then we meet her up at the stadium, and they do their thing. Pam and I rush to LS Tech real quick at like 4:30, grab a quick meal over there. It's our pregame meal. We get our meal, then we head over to the stadium and watch our Friday night football game, whether it's at the H, which is our home games. All of our home games were done a few weeks back. Now we go to all the away games. But it's one of those things where it seems like the season just started. We're hitting our routine right now. And this Friday is our last regular season game. And it's crazy how fast the season goes. Like this Friday night, our last regular season game is in Columbia, Missouri. It's out where Mizzou is. So we have to travel an hour and a half to go to the home, or to go to our it's an away game, obviously, out of Rock Bridge. And here's the kicker, and this is going to be what we talk about here in a minute. We have a Mizzou home game on Saturday. So Friday Night Lights is in Columbia. Then we have a game at 2:30 on Saturday in Columbia, but we're not staying the night in Columbia. So we're probably driving to Columbia Friday night. The game will get over with at about 10. It's an hour and a half drive home, driving back, getting up in the morning, driving back to Columbia, going to the game for Mizzou, and then driving back after the game. It's going to be a lot of driving in 24 hours and a lot of football. But that's what you do because it'll all be over before you know it. So, and then the season's over, regular season. Fortunately, we've qualified for the playoffs for high school, and then we'll see how that goes because we're in the biggest division in Missouri this year. Last year, we're in second biggest and we won, but we're with the big dogs, the big private schools. So it's really hard to win state in 6A. So we'll see what happens this year, but we'll give it a shot and we'll give our best efforts. Hopefully you're doing well and you're having a good time going and riding maybe some hay rides and going to the pumpkin patch and all that stuff. I know a lot of you guys have the younger kids, and we always did that when Mallory and Paige were younger, always did the pumpkin patch about this weekend, maybe last weekend. We always tried to time it right so that we could go to the pumpkin patch and get the perfect pumpkins and then carve them. So we had our jack-o'-lanterns out on the front porch long enough that we could enjoy them, but they were still not rotten on Halloween night. It was always a timing thing because you didn't want them to go bad too soon, because if you got a warm spell, they would go bad quick. So hopefully you're doing that. We'd always enjoy, shooting the air guns at the pumpkin patch, and they usually had like a flying zip line at the pumpkin. We have really cool pumpkin patches here in St. Louis. You pay a few bucks to go in. They'd have pony rides and arts and crafts and stuff like that. And you could, of course, buy all the goodies like the caramel apples. You guys have good pumpkin. I'm sure Trish does. Trisha up in Wisconsin. I'm sure they have like awesome pumpkin patches up that way. But what about you guys? Do you have good pumpkin patches this time of year? The thing is, we only have like 3 or 4 in St. Louis, and they've become super commercial. I mean, they used to be like 20 years ago, more like mom and pop, but there's like 3 or 4 now that are left, and they're like a huge, it's almost like a mini Six Flags. Like, because everybody goes to these 3 or 4, and they've gotten gigantic, compared to what they were 20 years ago. They offer so many more things, but here I am saying how awesome they are because, they have like a little kids area with slides and like a fort made out of hay bales and a maze and like there's like a, it's almost like Tom Sawyer Island with like caves and stuff, but it's made out of huge like stacks of hay bales. I mean, it's fun. So that's for the little kids. There's swings, there's big tire swings. And like I said, there's, these air compression guns you can shoot and try to knock off, tin cans and the zip line. I mean, it's wild. There's this stuff where, of course, then you got into the pumpkin patch on the tractor and get your pumpkins, but it's a big business, but it's a lot of fun. So I don't know if you guys have those, or maybe you just, maybe you're old school and you just go to some farmer's patch. That's what we used to do 20 years ago. We just went out in the country, actually went over to Illinois and just went out into a patch. They went seriously on the back of a tractor on a trailer. They'd drop you off and they'd say, be like, we'll be back in 30 minutes. You'd meet here and in 30 minutes, you'd pick out a pumpkin, you'd meet at that spot, get back on the trailer and go back in. You pay for your pumpkin, get in your car and go home. That was pretty simple. Place called Eckert's. Okay, so I just want to know. So let me know. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. I love your feedback. We didn't get a lot this week, which I understand why, because of the topic last week. So what's going on around here besides that? We have some great shows for you this week. Listener questions with Ricky and Pam coming your way tomorrow. We had a lot of fun with that. We got a really nice mini trip report from Catherine in Minnesota. And it wasn't long. It was like 7 or 8 paragraphs about her trip last month to Walt Disney World. And it really kind of stuck with me because she gave great feedback on her experiences with her daughter and her husband about the resort and about, practical stuff, dining experiences, going to the Halloween party. It rained and stuff like that. But the email that we got to read, and it wasn't long. We read it and probably I got to read it in like 5, maybe 7 minutes. It was really the essence of why we go to Walt Disney World. There was a lot of joy in the email. Her daughter got to get an Anna dress because that was her favorite princess and it just made her night. And they got to have meals together. Her daughter got to be the first person to meet Chef Mickey at Chef Mickey's. They had the first ADR of the day. And there was a joy in that. And I think we've kind of all been there. We've all had those seminal moments that we, something happened that it's like, it was really, really special. And I could just feel, Catherine took the time to pull out the keyboard and write the email to us to share the joy that she had on this trip quickly. And the fact that she shared that with us and that she allowed us to share that with our audience, it made me happy. And I hope the email that we share on the show tomorrow on the listener questions makes you happy as well, because that's what Disney's all about. Hopefully my goal for the podcast, I've learned this over the past few years, is a couple of things. One is that we share some laughs. This stuff isn't that serious. This is the good stuff. This is kind of the toy store. I hope every once in a while we share some laughs. I mean, we're not here to be jokers all the time, but hopefully it's fun. We can share some laughs and that we spark some memories for you. When I share a memory, you probably don't care about my memories as much, but hopefully it'll trigger a memory that you had about something that, oh yeah, I remember when my son did that, something similar, or my daughter, or, when I went with my dad or my mom or grandpa or Uncle Bob or something. I hope that we can do that for you. I really do, because when I listen to other podcasts, that's what happens for me. And it means a lot that other, podcasters that I listen to share stories and share memories, because I love hearing their stories. Because a lot of times in my mind's eye, I go right along with them on their journeys when they tell their stories from their childhood or from their vacations or what have you. But at the same time, I'm thinking, man, that reminds me of this time when I was a kid with my friend Ryan, when we went on this adventure that we were not supposed to be on because our parents had no idea. They thought we were here and we were there. because, we did something similar. So it triggers a memory for me while I'm also riding shotgun with this podcaster telling his story or her story. And that's why I enjoy podcasts so much. And I know we're not the best at it. And that's kind of the goal of this show. And this show is just totally right off the hip every time. This is supposed to be kind of an off the hip. Just it's you and me. It's Mike in the Midwest and you. And it's me just sitting down on Tuesdays. Hey, what's going on? Just checking in with Mike in the Midwest here, Mike Rallman here. And this is what's happening here in October. But I always want it to be something where we're just kind of conversing and sharing stories. And then you drop me a little feedback. We share it the next week and we move on and we go to the next week. So I hope you're having a good week. That's the bottom line. But yeah, and then on Friday show, I'm missing Disney Cruise Line, something fierce. I really want to be on a cruise ship. We had the awesome podcast cruise on the Wish in July. I'm really missing being out there. So what we did, Pam and Ricky and I sat down and we talked about the things that we really think Disney Cruise Line does well. What do we think they do well? So we really break it down there for Friday's show. And there's a special guest on Friday's show. Think Halloween season. One of our special guests that comes around once a year makes an appearance by popular demand. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. So last week, let me just say this about last week's show. I just want to thank each and every one of you for letting me do last week's show. I know that it probably wasn't for everybody. Last week's show, I called it Dodie in the Midwest. That's my dad. And it was kind of selfish for me to take over this podcast and dedicate it to my dad, basically the last 10, 15 minutes. But like I said on the show, my dad is my hero. He turned 70 last week to the day on last Tuesday. And I just felt like I owed it to him. One of the things I didn't say on the show, which I meant to, was we wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for my dad. He's the technical director of all of this. I know nothing about how to set up a podcast as far as the mixer, the microphone, the Adobe Audition, and back in the day, the Cool Edit Pro bootleg copy that we used for 12 of the years. It's one of those things. My dad was always here to show me how to do all this stuff. And he's always been an advocate for the podcast. And he's always sharing with the people at the radio stations he works at that, my son has this podcast. And he's always, the thing is, he was at a staff meeting the other day for iHeartRadio for the group that he works with at ESPN. He's part of the iHeartRadio group. And they were sharing statistics of how many downloads they've had on their app. And he knows how many downloads we have of the Be Our Guest podcast. And he wanted to say in the staff meeting that he knows we have had more downloads of our podcast than they had at their radio station. He didn't want to say it though, because they get their feelings hurt, but it is true. And he showed me the numbers. And that's something because that's a radio station and we're a little podcast, but we have passionate fans and we've been doing it for quite a long time. We put out consistent content and it's because of you guys. But my dad is a huge, he supports what we do, even though he's not a Disney fan. He appreciates that we have a community. And I just wanted to, and I hope everybody cares about their parents like I care about, my dad. He's always been, he took me to baseball practice all over God's earth. He brought me out to the country to play baseball, which now out to the country is exactly where I'm living. Because back in the day, this was the country from where we lived. But he's always been good to me. So I just wanted to point out some of the things that were pretty cool about him. So he did give me a call a couple days later. He's not a patron, but I told him how to listen to it on YouTube. And so he listened to it and he said he shed a tear when he heard it. And he called his brother, which is my uncle down in Poplar Bluff. And he said, my uncle listened to it and he shed a tear as well, because he was proud of his brother. So it meant a lot to the family. So I just wanted to thank you guys for putting up with me, for letting me put out that one show. Here's one thing I want to ask you to do though, because I didn't think my dad would care really. I didn't think it'd be a big deal, but he said it was a cool thing for his birthday and he really appreciated it. Do that for your parents. I didn't know it'd make that big of an impact, but it did. So if you have the opportunity and your parents are still around or somebody special in your life, record something for them. Tell a couple stories. I just told a story about how my dad was crazy catching John Denny with his wicked curveball and I'd fly around there. It wasn't groundbreaking stories, but they were stories that meant a lot to me. And I have 100 more of them I could share. I won't, because you guys probably don't need to hear them all. But I mean, if you do, let me know. I have tons more of my dad. But do that. I think I think you should try that for your parents, maybe for the holidays. Break down and tell stories of your grandparents, record them and let them know what they mean to you. Because you know what? The stories that you remember, your parents or grandparents might not even remember. They might not, the things that are special to you, your, the person you're thinking of might think that that was just a blip on the radar, but to you, it left a huge impression. So maybe do that. It's not that hard. Record it on your phone. Send them send it to them via email and just say, I got something I want you to hear sometime when you have a few minutes. Huh. You don't know the impression it might make. We can really make a difference on each other. So maybe try it this week. Okay. One piece of feedback from last week, it was from Trisha, my good friend up in Wisconsin. She says, mini trip report. Since you talked about your dad, I thought I'd share a couple of stories about my dad from the retirement trip we just had. And Trisha was out down in Walt Disney World. And I'll tell you what, every day she would shoot me an email with a picture from their trip, this retirement trip, and it made my day. I loved it. Like I could see them, it's Star Wars picture, and they were shooting Beverly. I didn't shooting Beverly early in the morning. I don't know about that. That was up to them, but it was awesome. They were having the best time, and it just made me happy seeing them like just enjoying Walt Disney World together. She said he hasn't been to Disney World for 20 years and absolutely loved Flight of Passage and Tron. His face lit up like a little kid. Most of the attractions, he was trying to figure out how they worked. He taught physics for 40 years and loves to learn how things work. And finally, he got into the antics of 50s prime time. He was reprimanded by our server for not setting the table and was determined to earn a Clean Plate Club sticker. I like the way your dad rolls. I have a couple of Clean Plate stickers. I'm trying to think where they are. I don't think it's on my iPad. I have a couple though, because I have earned those. They're on various computers. I'm trying to think. I have one floating around here somewhere because I have earned those, but I get a clean plate every time. I'm a big eater. But yes, 50s prime time is the best. And here's the thing. Trisha was living exactly what I'm talking about. Like, enjoy your parents and let them know how special they are to you if you have them, because it is, that they work hard for us. And my dad has worked really hard for me. So thank you for giving me that chance. And Trisha, thank you for the feedback. Drop a few lines this week, though, if you don't mind. I appreciate it over at patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Okay, quick topic for today. This Saturday at Mizzou is homecoming. It is homecoming, and everybody celebrates homecoming in their towns for their high school and for their universities, their colleges. But did you know, this is debatable, but this is what we claim. The University of Missouri invented homecoming. Yes, and we hold true to this. Homecoming was established at Mizzou. That is one of the things. We, in the 1800s, I believe it was, had the first homecoming celebration against the University of Kansas. We don't like Kansas. But we invited all of our alumni to come on back for a weekend to watch a football game against Kansas and celebrate the university. And the idea of homecoming was born. And we do homecoming big at Mizzou. Everybody does homecoming big at this point in their campuses, especially universities. We have like the parade. We have the Greek area of the university all does their house decorations. Of course, you have all the stuff that goes on all week. We have the United States largest blood drive at Mizzou throughout the week. It's gigantic. Just lots of celebrations, but of course it kind of culminates with the football game. But I wanted to say, and we're playing South Carolina this week, and we really need this football win, but we won't talk football. But if we win, we'll be 7-1, getting ready to go to Georgia after a bye week. It'd be huge. So I'm not saying to pray for us, because I don't think God cares who wins a football game, but think good thoughts. Man, it'd be great if we beat South Carolina on Friday or Saturday. But anyway, what I want to talk about related to homecoming is homecoming, going back to places where you have roots. And how many of those places can you still go back to? So I was thinking about the places I would really, really like to go back to, because I'm a nostalgic person. I talk about that all the time here on the show. One of the places I would love to revisit, which I can't, is my elementary school. I went to a couple elementary schools. I went to Duchesne, which is a public school, which I could have gone back to because I taught in the district and I used to, I taught gifted, so I'd float around to many schools. I wasn't worried about that one too much because I did go there every once in a while. That was just for kindergarten and first grade. But I went to second through sixth at a private school called North County Christian in Ferguson, Missouri. And the thing is, that school is still open, but it is moved campuses across town. It is no longer in Ferguson, Missouri. It's in Florissant, and they bought an old high school and totally moved campuses miles away. I would like to go back to the building where I went to elementary school and visit like my old classrooms. I think that'd be so cool to see because I have so many memories of sitting in those classrooms with my friends. And the thing is, it was a church school. It was run by a Nazarene church, super small. There was only one grade. There was only one class per grade in my grade. So every year it was the same kids in your class. There weren't like five second grades. There was only one. So you knew who was going to be in your class every year. And I just remember, just the hallways, how they look. I remember the bathrooms. I remember the drinking fountains. I remember the snack machines that like the teachers could use. We couldn't use them. I remember the cafeteria. We didn't have a gymnasium at this school until I was in sixth grade. They started to build one, and then I moved away after sixth grade. We moved, and then I went to a public school. So I only went there or two through six. But the building is still there, but it's now just the church, I believe. But I would love to be able to walk through that again, especially now that I worked in education for 17 years. So I think I'd look at it as like, how efficient is this educational space used? It's probably only used for Sunday school at this point. I don't even know if it's used for educational purposes, but I'd love to go in and see my second grade classroom, my third grade classroom, just kind of walk the halls and just for nostalgic reasons, see it one more time. That's a place I'd love to see. I'd love to go home to that. Going home again, another place I'd love to visit is my grandparents' house because I spent so much time at my grandparents' house as a kid. My grandparents were Allman. And the funny thing is that's on the street. I mentioned this last week. It's on the street where my wife teaches right now. She teaches at Combs Elementary, and my grandparents' house is on that street where they used to live, and it's where my dad grew up. And I was always over there as a kid. We celebrated Christmas Eve there every year, every holiday, Thanksgiving, we celebrated there. After church every Sunday, boom, we went over to grandparents' house and had lunch. And I was just always over there. And it was just that felt like, it was like the Cracker Barrel place. It was comfortable. There was always, they had two fireplaces they had a fireplace and like the formal, more like, and it wasn't a big house, but in the front room, there was like a fireplace. But in the back room that my grandpa added on, this is where we all sat and watched TV. There was a stove that like a buck stove that he put in there. And like there was always a fire in the buck stove. And so it was just comfortable. Like we'd sit back there and watch TV. And like this time of year, my cousins and I would sit there and we'd have the Sears catalog or the JC Penney catalog, and we'd be going through and looking at the toys we'd want for Christmas, and we'd be highlighting them or circling them with a pen or having a certain color marker. Like mine would be red, Chris's, my cousin, would be blue, and grandma would know what we wanted for Christmas. And it was just, there was always an energy there. And even if like my cousins weren't up and I was just over there with my sister, just there by myself, my grandpa, he took in the backyard, because we used to play golf together a lot. It wasn't a big yard either, but he took just a regular old like tumbler, like just a plastic cup you drink out of from like I don't know, like, I could get it at a pizzeria or something, dug a hole in the backyard, and then we stuck the cup down. And so we made this like a chipping spot in the backyard. So we would take the pitching wedge and chip golf balls and try to get it in that hole. And I wonder, like I was thinking about this the other day, I wonder if that cup is still in the backyard somewhere back there, if they like just still mow the grass over that, if somebody like took it out of the ground, or like wonder like why is there a cup in the in the back corner of this backyard? Because it was right in the back corner where the garage was, because my grandpa had a detached garage. But I would just like to go back there, just like I wonder what that house looks like, because my grandparents have passed away now, my grandma and grandpa, at least a decade ago. So obviously other people have been living in the house. Like, what's the house look like now? And I still have it in my mind's eye, and I think it would ruin it. If I went back, it might be bad because I picture it as it was. And if I were to walk through it now, it wouldn't have the same decorations. Like it wouldn't have the my grandparents had, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like two horses over the fireplace. I mean, they were big, like this piece of art, like these two gigantic horses. And it kind of scared us as kids. I don't know what that was all about, but it was always there. And if they didn't have that, I would be disappointed, like, if that wasn't over the fireplace in the front room. My grandpa had this lamp kind of thing that was like a orangey color in that front room, and the other opposite corner that he brought home from the Holy Land when he visited, like, in the '70s. I don't even know how he got it back from the Holy Land. It was this big lamp. Now that I think about it, how would you even bring something like that from the other side of the world? He said it was from the Holy Land. I don't know, it could have been from Montgomery Ward. My grandpa wouldn't lie like that, but because he did go to the and he had a whole bunch of stuff from the Holy Land. Like, I mean, he had like hand carved camels, and I mean, I'm sure it was. My grandpa didn't lie, but it's one of those things. I would love to go back and see that my grandparents' house. So, do you have places like that? I'd love to go back one more time to the skating rink where I managed. I basically grew up there. I was there from the time my next door neighbors owned it, and I was in that skating rink from the time I was 4 years old through college because I ended up running the place for years and years. I DJ'd it, I managed it, I speed skated there. And when I was a speed skater, which I was for over 10 years, I practiced 6 nights a week. So, I mean, I had blood, sweat, and tears on that floor. And I played roller hockey there. We qualified for nationals out of that rink. I mean, I would live in that skating rink for months on end. And it was I was at that skating rink more than I was at my house for long stretches of time, and I would just love to go back because the skating rink, I mean, if you've ever been to a roller skating rink, there's a certain smell that every roller skating rink has. Usually, it's kind of like sweaty hockey players or, cotton candy in certain places or old funky roller feet, stuff like that. But to go back and see that because ours was kind of a purpley pink color at the end to see that color scheme again, but in the early days, it was kind of a browny orange kind of color scheme, and there was carpet on the walls again, kind of Epcot-y. But just to go back and just to explore and walk around and see, to roll around on that maple floor because we had a really nice floor. It was maple to be able to take a couple speed laps around the floor and go up into the DJ booth and maybe play a couple of tunes one more time. To be able to go home to have a homecoming to Spinning Wheels Roller Rink in Florissant, Missouri. To be able to say, hey, give us a call at 839-0515. That was the phone number to get the hours and what was happening at the wheel, or to go back to the snack bar. We always sold Pepsi. We were a Pepsi rink, and to get a Pepsi or tostada. We had tostadas or a pizza. We had a pizza oven that made these awesome rectangle pizzas, very similar to what you got in school, but they tasted so good. Or we had Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. We had a little Otis Spunkmeyer cookie oven. Oh, those things were solid. We had a cotton candy machine. I mean, we had good stuff. But to be able to go home, but I think what would be the best about that would be to go back and see the people because it was all about the people that I got to hang with. I mean, it was always about Ron, the owner. He was the best. I mean, he was really a mentor for me. And the other people that I worked with, John, who has since passed away, he taught me all about the game of hockey. The other people that I speed skated with, and to be able to go back and high five people and to share some memories, to have a reunion, to have a homecoming, that would be awesome. So I was just kind of thinking about that today. So let me ask you this question as it is homecoming season. A lot of folks have already had homecoming, kind of, right in the heart of it here. Some people are still having it here for the next few weeks. Non traditionally, if you could pull a homecoming and go somewhere besides your university or your high school, what are some of the places that you would like to go back to if you could? And what are some of the places you'd like to go back to, even if you couldn't, like my elementary school or my skating rink that are no longer accessible, my grandparents' house, and why? Let me know because I'd love to share that next week. That'd be a lot of fun for us. So patreon.com/be our guest podcast. And I hope I sparked a couple of good memories for you. All right. I hope you're having a great week and I appreciate you so very much. Hope everybody blesses you. And if you're having a rough week, hang in there because that turnaround could be right around the corner. Don't forget that. It's going to get better. All right. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.